I was very much looking forward to this week because I followed the work of both you and Brandon
Oh,
for quite
thank
some
you.
time. I've saw a number of Brandon's films, and yours, I realized I was just kind of going through the list. This is like the seventh film I've seen of yours now.
Thank you
So,
so much. I really appreciate
uh,
that. It's, it's
it-
passion. It's I love what I do, and I think it's really, really cool that, you and some others have followed my career as it progressed a little bit. So I'm really grateful for anyone who watches our films. It really makes a huge difference, and it's more fun now to talk about because sometimes I just spend half the time talking about like, hey, so this one movie I did, and then like explain the whole thing. And by the time I finish with that, to talk about the original point, like the interview's over. So it really helps when I get to just skip all of that. I was like, oh, you know what I'm doing already, so we're good. Got that covered.
we, yeah, well, what I always love is it's because you and Brandon and even the gentleman who wrote your story for Frost, which is, yes, everyone, that's what we're talking about.
Yes.
Devanny Pinn about Frost coming out October 11th. We'll get that formal stuff out of the way. But James Cullen Bressick as well. I followed his as well, and when I saw all three of you were working on Frost, I'm like, okay, now I'm in for something interesting.
I love that you knew that. Yeah, it's so we've been friendly. James has been a friend of ours for a very long time. We've also followed him in his career as he's been coming up, and it's a big community and it's a small community. So all of us OGs who kind of stuck with it, we all know each other now, and we've wanted to work together on something for a while, but it just never was quite the right project. And then ultimately, COVID hit,
Right.
and yeah, and then so I think everyone was kind of struggling to figure out what to make or how to create content in that landscape. And James, who's prolific in this kind of space, he was like didn't slow down a bit, wheeling and dealing all throughout COVID. And so he had put together a deal with Cleopatra Records, and he knew I was pregnant at the
Mhm.
time. And so I had actually shot like 4 or 5 films during COVID while I was pregnant, but I was starting to show. And so I thought I was going to be done. I was like, all right, I'm
Mhm.
going to kick back and just relax for the rest of this. And James knows me very well, and he knows I
Mhm.
like really twisted, dark stuff. So he Cleopatra wanted a true story,
Sure.
and so James had been scouring the internet, and the way he pitched the film to me was like he just sent me the article. I can't say what the article was because
Right,
it's a
right. Yep,
spoiler of the movie.
yep.
Um, but he just sent me the article with just like, you down? And he knows me, and he knows I was down. Darn it! So he totally got me, and so then I had to, of course, pitch it and drag
Mhm.
Brandon on, who was like, who saw the article, was like, I'm not making that. But he was. He just didn't know it yet.
Yeah. Well, that takes care of my first five questions right
I'm
there. So
sorry. Yeah, I'm
no, you've been doing this all day.
good.
I can tell you've been doing this all day. See, that's pulling back the veil because I think some people, even with the big Hollywood stuff, I learned through my friend who does work out there. He started the Hollywood Critics Association out there.
Yeah.
We Live Entertainment, that very good friend of mine, Scott Menzel. But he was telling me, and he'd show me about those pressers, where we get the clips of the famous people in front of the poster, and it's
Yes.
dark lighting and that. And you're like, I always wondered why sometimes they look a little tired. And now I know, doing this for a while, that
Yeah. I mean, I can't really be that upset about it. Like,
sure.
I'm not going to spin because I'm actually not even wearing any pants. Spoiler. The whole thing's going to be spoilers today. But I'm just sitting in my room. I'm totally cozy. Like,
Sure.
they've been bringing me coffee. I'm great right now, honestly. So I don't even have the right poster up. Look here.
No,
Ready? Frost.
there you go.
Oh,
Oh,
there you go.
I am,
Cleopatra, I did it.
I am so jelly because I'm a big vinyl collector. Wasn't planning on it, but I've
Oh,
collected vinyl, and I saw that it was coming out on vinyl, and I'm like, I'm going to have to get that because I love vinyl. I even review vinyl on my channel occasionally.
well, then you need to email Cleopatra, and I will too, and make sure that you get a copy for review.
Well, thank you. I did reach out to them. I did get my copy of Frost, though, here for a
Yay,
review, the
yay.
DVD, which this lovely cover, which you have on here. And yeah, I'm glad you brought up that you're kind of into the darker stuff, because I was wondering, because I'm watching this going, wow, this, where it took a turn. And also, I'm glad you brought it up, because I was trying to figure out a creative way to ask, were you actually pregnant during this
It's
time?
so funny. Okay, so I was actually talking to Brandon briefly, and I was like, I have 100% of my interviews have been with guys, and
Sure.
the best part about that has been like everybody like plot, for the interview wanted to ask like, were you really pregnant? But no, but you could even, and I knew when the question was coming because they all started to get like, because nobody wanted to offend me in case I was just like fat or
Right.
something. You know what I mean? So I was getting kind of like loopy earlier on, and I was like, one of them asked me, "Was we really pregnant?" And I was like, "No."
That's wonderful.
And I was like, "I'm just bloated," and like he was so upset. So no, I'm done messing with everybody today. But yeah, I was absolutely pregnant, 6 months and 9 months during pickup. So
Wow.
very pregnant doing this movie. Yes, yeah.
Adding to the challenge already of what this movie
There
is.
wasn't enough challenges in this film, so I'm like, let's just add a few more. Fuck it. Like, oh, can I curse in yours?
Oh, absolutely,
Okay,
yeah.
okay,
Oh, yeah. You're
good.
good. No worries. No worries there.
Yeah,
So
we just needed to just stockpile the challenges on this one.
yeah.
So Cleopatra was awesome, commissioned the film, and so we had a really tiny budget at this point
Mhm.
because in the peak COVID, this was like during lockdown style peak COVID. Nobody knew what was going to happen with
Sure.
film and TV. Nobody was greenlighting anything
Mhm.
because they just didn't know what the format was going to be. They didn't know if stores were ever going to reopen, and so it was just really high risk thing. So we had, thank you to Cleopatra, we had a budget, but it was very contained. So we had that challenge. We had COVID and shooting where we were only allowed to have a couple of people in the cast and crew at any point in time. And then to top it off, I was extremely pregnant. Throw in, we're actually going to film on a mountain in the winter
Right.
with huge amounts of hail and rain and snow, but not consistently, because then it would have been easy to dress the set. The next day it was 80 degrees. I mean, I can't even with this. It was like the first day or two, we were all super stressed out. And after that, there was so many things to overcome that we were just like laughing every day. We're like, what's going to happen? That's fine. We were waiting for me to actually go into labor on one of these because it was just so intensive. But fortunately, that didn't happen until it
Oh,
was
that's
supposed
good.
to.
That
And we made it through the movie,
mhm.
and I was safe, baby was safe, my crew took really great care of me, and so it was just a matter of making sure that we uh did right by the story
Mhm.
itself,
Sure.
and then pushed it far enough where we showed respect for the material, but then also took the audience on the ride that they needed to be taken on. And so just getting that tone right was really, really important.
And it does take you on a ride. I was
Yes.
when I was talking to Brandon yesterday, we talked a bit about the ending, quite a bit actually, because uh, again, surprising. We're not going to spoil it, but I was very happy, and this sounds weird and twisted, and I'm sure it does, but I was very happy it went where it went,
Oh,
because it was,
really?
yeah, well, because I couldn't quite predict. And then just before we get that moment, I was like, wait, are they going? Oh, and then I smiled, because that's what I love about indie film. Many things that I've grown to love over the years is that you take chances and you do
Yeah.
things. You have the opportunity to do things that you might not necessarily be able to do with bigger studio films. And you've been involved
Yes.
in both, I
Yes.
imagine. So, what was it like to kind of work on a small scale project again?
That's actually a really great question. And so our team obviously was very, very small. It's a very small movie. There's only 2.5 people in the cast, and the crew was almost small. We had like 10 people max at
Mhm.
any point. Really had to scale back to meet COVID regulations at the time. And the great thing about it was that everyone on the team was really, really good at what they did, and everybody had worked on studio blockbusters
Mhm.
and zero budget indie and everything in between. So we didn't have, like just a couple of students out like, hey, let's make a movie. And we didn't have, a big studio blockbuster that was like what do we do with restricted, you know, resources? And I think honestly, I don't mean to gloat a little bit, but like when everything hit the fan,
Mhm.
these big television and film studios didn't know what to do. They didn't
Right.
know how to create content on a contained scale. And that's when, for a brief moment, these indie kids like us really got the jump for a
Mhm.
second, because we didn't skip a beat. Like, you know, Brandon, James, Kelton, our DP, I mean, everybody on our team, you know, Bressic had just come off of a Mel Gibson movie, and you know, Brandon was doing a slate in the Philippines. I mean, like we all had big things going on that stopped, and we're like, for a minute, we're like, how do we? It's been a while. How do we do this again? But it literally is just a couple of meetings in, and then we're like, oh, here's a restriction, and I've got a great idea outside the box and how we can handle that, how we can tackle it. And so instead of feeling restricted or held back, it did exactly the opposite. It really got the creativity flowing. Everyone thought outside the box on everything, on how to achieve you know, a film that could hang and compete. And that's really what the goal was. A lot of people were making content in COVID for COVID times.
Right.
And we kind of looked at it as, hey, can we take these boxed in restrictions with COVID and make a movie that can still compete on the
Mhm.
mainstream when everything's over and it releases? So even though it's a contained movie, it's meant to feel claustrophobic
Right.
and still be a complete story on its own, even though it was very, very.
It was claustrophobic. I imagine that was a bit of a challenge, not only because you were with child, but the fact that you're pretty much in this car for the majority of the film. Yeah.
Literally, like when he first approached the project to me before I was, you know, able to
Mhm.
drag Brandon onto it, that was my first question. Actually, I was like, how the hell are we going to tell you know, a 90 minutes with, you know, me in a car? I was like, I
Right.
don't even want to watch that. You know, boring. I mean, because we've seen that. We've
Mhm.
seen the movie with one person in a small space, and it's been done a couple different times on like major scale. You know, I'm
Right.
not Ryan Reynolds. I'm not, you know, these major Hollywood stars. And I was like, so I'm not going to do it if we can't figure out a way to make it interesting and keep moving the story forward. Like, because
Right.
obviously we knew what our ending was going to be, but there had to be a whole build to that kept the audience engaged. And I didn't want people snoozing all the way to it. So, so you know, James wrote out a breakdown of how the story would go, and then I felt confident that like we could make a solid pitch to Brandon, and Brandon I think really builds tension well,
Mhm.
and so I thought that he would be able to start us off with a really PG, boring, by the numbers kind of setup, and just fake out the audience into what we knew was going to be the height of this film. And so that's kind of the approach we took on it.
But I like that approach, in all honesty. It had me concerned, I will say, a little bit when I was watching it. I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Oh,
I'm
what
like
is this crap?
I'm like
Shit. And I have to review it. Oh my God.
it wasn't crap. I'm just like, "Okay, this is we've kinda
It
seen,
was
okay."
crap, but it
Oh,
was meant. But it was meant. That's the thing. Now we can say it was
Mhm,
designed that way
mhm,
to be very stereotypical, very PG, very like it thinks it's going to be original. I mean, it's we've seen this movie, like so we did that on purpose
mhm.
in hopes. Like the only it was risky because we were afraid being a smaller movie and very safe in the
Right.
beginning. We were worried, like, are people going to turn this off because they don't think they're
Mhm,
going to miss anything? So that was kind of a risk in
mhm.
that, but I think it needed to happen in order to be able to fake out the audience for the end. And, you know, as someone who really just only does horror, you've seen so much. Horror fans are desensitized.
They are.
Yeah, they've seen everything. They've been on every ride, you know, and there's such a formula to horror that
Mm,
if you watch enough of it, you can literally pinpoint this is going to happen next. This is going to happen next.
mm,
The music cues you, the angles cue you, the build up cues you, and then you can't lose yourself in this film. So,
mm.
so when we tell stories now, whether it's small or big, we really try to make sure the audience, whether they know it or not, is going on the journey with us and can get lost in it. I want people to be able to say at the end of it, I did not see that coming. And so so that was absolutely the goal with this, and hopefully they stick with it. I think enough reviews have come out now where
Yeah.
people know that they just need to stay on the ride and get the payoff.
Wondering where that is. But I'm glad we had that part in the beginning, because you have some wonderful scenes with Vernon Wells, and
Oh yeah.
you two played off each other so well, even if it was a bit cliche and tropish, with the situation and everything. You two really had a chemistry together. Now, had you known Vernon Wells before the film?
Yes.
Mhm.
So Vernon is a really good friend of mine,
Mhm.
actually. I think I'm glad you said it. I really felt that it did come through on camera. And so I appreciate you saying that. Vernon is one of the most wonderful human beings you'll ever meet. He is, just as wonderful behind the camera as he is in person as he is, on screen, and just as iconic. He's such a character. I absolutely love him. We met on the convention scene years
Oh,
ago. We actually had booths next to each other. And as you can tell from talking to me, I'm like a big noisy personality. So you have to talk to me whether you like it or not. And it just so happened that Vernon liked it and he was
sure.
totally entertained, and we became friends and have kept in touch ever since. We've done a ton of movies together at this point, but we had never really had some serious screen time together. Like we did a million movies,
Right.
even in this movie actually.
Mhm.
But we never, it was always like he would get a cameo one day on this, I would get a cameo one day on that, and like, maybe we'd have one scene together or a few lines and that was it. We'd never had a chance to really like throw down opposite each other. And so again, like we talked about before, this unique circumstances of the pandemic and my
Yeah,
pregnant situation
sure.
presented a unique opportunity. And so even though it was a smaller film, I called him and I was like, hey, I've got this thing, and what do you think? And he jumped at the opportunity because, and as you see from his performance, he's a phenomenal actor,
He is,
and
yes.
nobody really gives him a chance to show dramatic side and really like do something meaty with it. And he just loved the role, loved the chance to like do a whole movie with me. And so he came on and he really committed
Mhm.
to the character, to the film. He's still, actively promoting it with us. And I just love him, and I hope that more people will see this, and whether they like the movie or not, I hope that they like him in it and will give him more opportunities to play against type, because he's really just phenomenal, got great range and phenomenal contributions to
Mhm.
movies, more than just being iconic Vernon Wells.
Yeah, this was actually the second movie I've seen of him in the last couple months. He was also in Of the Devil, which you got to
Yes,
do a scene in as
a
well, which is
cameo.
a cameo. Yeah, I was like, oh hey, look, it's
But
Devanny.
well, I
Awesome.
actually, the thing of it is Kelton, who is the writer director of that,
Mhm.
he had just come off of being the DP, the director of photography on Frost.
Sure.
So he had just worked with Vernon and I. So he actually, to kind of make light of all that, he wrote in cameos for both Vernon and I in the next one. And so we shot Of the Devil together. And
Nice.
Kelton's, as well, you saw he
Yes.
managed to make the cinematography in like one person in one little space into a whole movie. He's just visually really, really brilliant. So
Yeah,
I
you it really worked in well, considering you're shooting within a car, and
yes,
especially in a car
yes,
where you have other things in there too.
yes.
I was very impressed with the cinematography as well, and I think that helped make it work. And also, and I talked to Brandon a bit about the use of color and such, and you get to wear makeup yet again. You have the poster behind you,
Yeah.
Crossbreed, which uh I loved the makeup on you in Crossbreed. It
Thank
was
you.
like
Yeah, it was so cool. Oh
that.
my gosh, full body prosthetics. That was like, geez, like 14 hours of makeup. It was crazy.
I was almost like, oh look, a new Sill. If they ever do another Species movie, there you go.
That was the inspo for it for sure. I'm like a huge fan of that. I was like, all right, if we're gonna have an alien movie, with an 80s vibe to it, I was like, I can't contribute in this movie. I produced that was my film, but
Sure.
like, I was like, what do guys really want to see as far as an alien? Like we can't top Alien itself, you know what I
Right.
mean? Like we don't
Mhm.
have, $2 million worth of makeup for this. So what can we do to actually like, make an
Mhm.
impact? I was like, my second favorite alien is from Species, and I was like, you know what I can contribute? Breasts. Yep.
Hey,
So we are the sexy spin-off alien. And actually it's so funny in like one of the territories in Asia, they actually retitled it as an alien species,
oh,
a species knockoff. Yeah. So we have like an unofficial like extra sequel in Species somewhere over in Asia. So that was fun.
I
But
always, I always love to see how international films try to
it's
promote
so much better.
movies.
Oh
Yeah.
my god, they have a great sense of humor. It's so funny. We take it very serious over here. You know what I mean?
Oh
Like
yeah.
Frostbeef's a very serious deal here, but it's not. It's meant to be like light and fun, and
Mhm.
it was Space Expendables in one territory. It was yeah. I mean, we had a blast. It was fun. Not the movie we're here to promote. Sorry, I
No.
just like. Okay, so I actually have a Frost poster too. We had it at the premiere a few days ago, and my amazing costume designer, Megan. Hi, Megan. She took it home with her after the premiere because I was doing a bunch of interviews, and I
Mm.
forgot to get it back from her. So I
Yeah,
have I have the vinyl.
there you
Yes,
go. You got the vinyl.
yes,
Again, you're teasing me with the vinyl. You're
yes,
teasing me with
yes.
the.
I just want to make sure Cleopatra knows that I'm actually here promoting their movie,
Oh
not
no.
the one that's just hanging on my wall.
Where I was going with that, because of the breed, with crossbreed, you had the makeup. You do actually have a lot of makeup in here as well.
Yes.
That was very effective and helped convey the frost, the cold
Yeah.
that was happening. Did you have to be in makeup? Did it take a while to apply that as you went on,
No.
or?
I was like really worried about that because, the progression had to be there, the makeup had to be real. Like
Mhm.
if it didn't look frosty, so to speak,
Right.
then it wasn't gonna work. It was gonna cheapen the film, and the tone of this movie is not light, it's not
No.
you have to get it right on that. But Oliver, the makeup artist, was like, oh yeah, I got it. And it was like, are you sure? I'm like, didn't sound very confident about that. I was like, no, I was like, we don't have tons of time for it and everything. And I had done research on like how they achieved the look in Titanic for
Sure.
all the frost
Mhm.
people at the end. The frost people, excuse me, the
The
frozen people
frost
at the
people.
frost people. Uh, but yeah, so and I knew how
Mhm.
long they were sitting in makeup, which was
Sure.
hours and hours and hours to do it. And he's like, "No, I got this." And I was like, "All right, well, how much time do you need for me to be in the chair?" Because
Mhm.
that's the thing with this movie. There was nobody else to cut to or shoot while
Right.
I was in makeup. It just same thing like when being pregnant. If I didn't feel good, there was just no downtime. Like you had to just figure it out. He's like, "Well, 10 minutes, 15 maybe." I was like, what's this gonna look like? Oh my
Sure.
god, right? I was like, okay, and then I was just freaking out. So the first time, the first scene with Frost on it was actually Vernon. Um,
Right.
spoilers, and he came out of makeup, and the whole thing took just a couple of minutes. He looked so good. Oliver, dude, knew how to work this
Mhm.
makeup so effectively. Like my progressions in each of those took 5 minutes in
Wow.
between. He's
Mhm.
so good. Usually you get one of the usually you get fast or good. And I am so thrilled to say that he casually managed to do both. I'm very proud of the makeup on Frost for sure.
And it was very effective, and it helps get the idea across between that
Yes.
and what techniques that Brandon used. I think it's very effective. And yeah, that's just what impressed me with it. I mean, I figured it was going to be good. In all honesty, I was maybe a little biased. I'm like, well, it's got Devanny, it's got Brandon, it's got James Cullen.
Aw,
It's gonna be like, I'm at least gonna find some things to enjoy. And it really, especially that second half. But you needed that time with your characters beforehand, I think, to
yeah.
connect, because
Yeah.
not only spending time, the chemistry between you and Vernon, characters, but just spending that time with them, because but not too much time, because I've seen some films to where you spend almost too much time with them. You're like,
You're
so
like, I
they
don't care. Are they dead yet? My God.
somebody
Kill
gonna
these
die?
people.
Yeah, this was a horror film. We got our 5 minute stinger, and now yeah, we're about an hour in, and
Right?
no
Yeah,
one's
no,
died.
get to it already. So that you're so right. Again, that's that formula of making sure the beats are right.
Right.
And you need you need to care enough about the people you're following through that you want to go on a journey with them, but not too much where you're like, is this journey happening or what? Because then it takes you out of it and you got to get them back again. So it really is a very delicate dance. And again, we really felt the pressure on this one to try and get those beats right, because again, it wasn't even just getting to know these people because there's only two characters, you have to follow them, but it was making sure the audience thought that they were watching this kind of movie so that way they could be faked out. And so again, just really really trying to balance all of those elements to get it. But that's what happens when you have a bunch of crazy ambitious indie kids who all get together when they're bored during COVID. Here we are.
Well, and it's one of those things too where I think Hollywood misses it sometimes, because you need at least one character that you like.
Yes.
In all honesty, even if it's the killer, even if
Yes.
if you're rooting for the killer, like in a
and
slasher.
I usually do. That's yeah.
You're like, oh, what way is he going to kill this teenager? Or whatever,
I know. I don't even care like who's the regular, kids or the family or whatever. I'm like, no, bring on the bad guy. Yeah.
And maybe it's a generational thing, but that was one of the things, unfortunately, that didn't appeal to me to a different film, Bodies, 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 that came out. A lot of people were raving about it. But for me, I was just like, it was all right. I just didn't care for any of the characters, just like in the first Hostel too. I didn't care for anyone. I'm like, kill them. Yes, please.
So, and that's so funny because I actually love Hostel.
Yeah.
But that's the thing is like, so, and it's different. I feel like torture porn is its own subgenre. And I know because I just did this with Death Count. There's some people that you need to root for in it. And sometimes the concept itself is what you need to root for. Right. And sometimes you need to hate the people you're following. So that way you want them to die. So when they die, you feel satisfied, because like Hostel, the point of it is the horror of it is the concept itself, right, of this underground ring of death, right? Of the sport of death. And you have to cheer for that. You almost need to cheer for the death squad guys, in order to do it. And if you loved these characters who were going there to die, when they're dead, you're like, you don't want to watch the rest of the movie. And then right. Again, the concept of it itself, that's what you needed to cheer for and be like impacted by. So they were almost there just to ironically be bodies. But I thought that they were likable enough that you would go to, you would go to the spa with them and go to the club with them, and the girls are hot enough where like, sure, I'll go to that really scary thing back over there. Barbara Novikova comes to me and says, hey, do you want to go to the spa? I don't even care if I know I'm gonna die when I get there. I'm absolutely going with her 100%.
Though I don't think the European Tourist Bureau really enjoyed Hostel, nor the
no. Okay, I was exactly the right age, like audience wise for that, because when I was in high school, my senior year, everyone would go to Europe for their senior trip before going. That was like the rite of passage in our region. Right. So I was so excited when I got to high school. I was going to plan this trip starting like freshman year. Unfortunately, Hostel came out.
Oh no.
And so all the parents and all the kids were like, you're all going to be trafficked and die in this death cult. You can't go to Europe. And so literally that was the end of this. Like, I mean, they had been doing it for 50 years.
Sure.
That was the end of that rite of passage class trip. Nobody went to Europe for like years.
Wow.
So I'm sure the tourism board like hates that movie, hates us all, and because we all stayed home, and it wasn't just like my little thing. When the internet became a little more popular, this was like MySpace days. Everybody, my generation was not backpacking through Europe anymore. We all stayed the fuck home but that's the sign of a great movie,
right? That's true.
Messes with your real life.
And that's the thing with Hostel is, I don't fault it. I recognize what it is. Just me personally, it didn't quite appeal. I liked Hostel 2 a lot more. I enjoyed it a lot more the way it played out.
Okay, so hold on,
yeah.
Because I love Hostel 2, and I get hate for that all the freaking time.
Really?
And yes. Horror fans and critics, they shit all over Hostel 2, and I thought it was a really solid follow-up to the original, and it was what I wanted out of a sequel for it. It has my favorite death scene, which is that bathtub with the head. Oh,
Yes.
oh yes, yes, so good, so good.
It is. The only problem I had with Hostel 2 was the first like 10-15 minutes, because I always have a problem with films, and we've seen it through horror many years, where the survivors of the previous film don't last like 10 minutes into the next film.
That's right. Pass that torch and get the fuck off the screen. Absolutely.
You know, that was the only thing, but the rest of Hostel 2 I really enjoyed, because there was one character under the main lead actress. I liked her character enough to where I was like, I want to see her succeed. And and bringing it back around to Frost, we have two characters we spend that time with, that you don't want something bad to happen. We know them enough, even if it is a bit Hallmark relationship of, oh, they're going to go for a fishing trip in the mountain. You but at least you still, even subconsciously, have at least a little bit of a connection going, these are nice people, though. I don't want anything. And I've seen the cover. There's a wolf, and then there's a really half dead looking woman with blood on her face. I don't want bad things to happen.
Yeah. And that's the thing. That's again part of the marketing. I actually haven't asked Cleopatra if that was intentional or not, but I'm gonna go with it. That was part of, like, they really got on board with the fake out process. And that was the goal, is we wanted you to think that maybe spoilers, the wolf is more prevalent in the story surrounding that than it really was. So the whole goal is to lure you in enough where you'll sit and you'll watch the movie, but then again be taken for a ride.
You've produced many films. You produced Frost as well. You've produced, what, 10 films, and I've actually seen like 4 of them already that you produced.
Thanks so much.
Oh, and you mentioned this is a smaller cast, so you're wearing many hats. What would you say is your hat that you kind of prefer? Do you prefer the producing, or do you prefer being in front of the camera, or is it equal?
For me, it depends on the story. Really. So I'm an actress first. That's my passion, my love, my profession, really. I started producing out of necessity, because I was protective about quality control.
Sure.
And is the short, polite answer for that. And also, I did a lot of work quietly behind the camera, as far as just wanting to learn. I really felt like, to do my best work as a performer, I should understand as many jobs as possible. And it started just with, like, I wanted to know sound, so I knew, like, where my mic was and what not to hit when I was turning, or like where not to turn my face or protect. Or so it started with that. Then I wanted to know, well, I didn't look very good in that last shot. Where's my light? How does the lighting work? Where's that? Oh, they're switching lenses. What does that mean for my framing? Am I in a close up? So it just kind of, like, me being really mouthy and nosy. I just needed to know everyone's job. And before long, I really started to know more than a lot of people on the set. Ironically, because I was working in smaller projects. And then I was like, well, I really like knowing about everyone's job. And then I was like, I want to know about what happens before we get to set. So, so then I started looking at development, and then I wanted to know, well, this movie was so freaking good. Why didn't it get a bigger release? I wanted to know how distribution worked. And so before I knew it, I just had to know everybody's job and everyone's business. And now I'm a producer. So yeah, so it came down to, and Brandon Slagle made the transition from being in front of the camera to behind to directing, and then I was very protective of that, and wanting to help see that transition to where he wanted to be, which is currently where we're at now, directing much bigger budget action films. So I was protecting and helping guide that process. So now I don't know if I'll produce as much. That's actually a great segue into, I produced an action movie that's coming out in a few months.
Would that be
not even in that one? I just produced it because I loved the story. So that, I guess, answers your question. For the most part, I just act. There was the story that we did. Again, this is the tail end of COVID, so we'll see next year if the answer changes. But James Cullen Bressick, put together a mid-level action movie that Brandon was going to direct. I actually wrote the story for
Oh,
it.
nice.
It's called Breakout, and it's about a father and son relationship. And the father was special ops, not present while he was growing up, and the son, in his absence, got into some trouble with the law, just small time stuff, and then eventually shoots an undercover cop
Oh.
in a dispute and goes to
Mhm.
prison at the top of our film. And so his father comes to visit him in jail, rekindle, and try to fix the relationship. And while that's happening, simultaneously, someone who's incarcerated with him is a domestic terrorist
Oh,
played by
jeez.
Brian Krause from Charmed,
Sure. Yeah.
and who's a phenomenal freaking actor. And so he has orchestrated a takeover of the prison simultaneously while this visit is happening, and the prison becomes under his control. So the son now needs to choose whether he's going to align with his father, who is special ops and going to try and save the day, or align with his inmate new friends.
Mm.
And it's kind of a weird, twisted coming of age story within a die-hard kind of situation. So I'm very proud of it. It's a really, like, I'm biased, but it's a pretty strong film. I think
Mm.
has all the action elements and epic performances by Brian Krause, Christos Andrews, who is an Emmy Award winner from the Bay
Mhm.
series, and Louis Mandylor from action movie fame. And so that comes out in a few months too. But beyond that, I'm just an actor.
You're just an actor. Well, there's nothing wrong with. I mean, considering where you started out, I hope you don't mind me bringing it up. I was doing a little bit of digging.
Oh no.
Considering you started out with, and I know you probably don't have to say, but you studied and sang opera as well as did ballets and musicals,
Yes.
and you moved to horror, which I love because horror is my favorite genre.
Me
But
too. Yeah.
I'm like, wow, that's really
A
that's
jump,
really
right?
that's really
Yeah.
a jump.
So I was going to do, I mean, I grew up in musicals and ballet theater, and was very much a Disney kid, church going Christian, which I still am actually.
Sure.
But I just very much fit the mold of like a little good girl. And I hadn't even seen a horror movie. Like my mom didn't let me watch horror like until I was like, 17. And no, seriously, I just didn't see it.
Yeah.
I like could quote any Disney movie. I couldn't tell you anything about it. So when I was 17, I moved to Arizona to get residency, to go to college there. I got an opera scholarship for college, and I was trying to connect with the theater community there, and I didn't find any theater, but I found an independent film audition. I didn't know what independent film was.
Sure.
My mom thought it was porn,
Of
and
course. Of
yeah,
course. Yeah.
right. So I went just for like research, trying to connect with my local community there, and it turned out it was a horror movie, and I booked the lead in it. Honestly,
Nice.
I'd never acted before, so but my theater, it just happened to be the right role at the right time. It was a
Sure.
very very unique, dramatic role, and it did well when it came out, and it led me to Lloyd Kaufman, which, if you know who that is, he's the founder of
Absolutely.
Trauma. And Lloyd immediately took a liking to me, took me under his wing, introduced me all over the place. I toured with him and did conventions and signings, and it was the Make Your Own Damn Movie
Mhm.
tour. So I
Sure.
learned all about filmmaking, and ultimately was a super tromette.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know, fancy. So yeah, so I was all over with that, and then between that and the first movie doing well overseas, I got another call to do someone else's horror movie, and then another one, another one. So eventually, I just ended up dropping out of school and just acting full time. That's what I've been
Sure.
doing ever since. And I did a little bit of other stuff when I first started. I thought I liked just film, and so I did like a romantic comedy and a few other things. And then I was like, shit sucks. When do I get to kill everyone? Like, you know what I mean? All these actors
Yeah.
are really pretentious and annoying. Like, when do they get the axe to the face? And instead, I had to,
Sure.
pretend to date them.
Yeah.
Like, happy ending. I'm like, this is terrible. Gee.
When do I put the arsenic in the coffee? What the heck?
So I went right back to horror, and I've been there ever
Sure.
since. And I absolutely love it. It's what I get it,
Mhm.
and I enjoy it. I enjoy the fans.
So
And
when are we going to see the horror musical from you? Because those we've gotten a few of those over the
I was
years.
attached to one. It was the
Were
top of
you?
my bucket list, and I was
Oh,
attached to one during COVID,
mhm.
and it just unfortunately fell apart.
Oh,
I know, I am like devastated. It was like Legally Blonde meets Sweeney Todd,
oh
and
wow.
it was bad ass. It was so fucking cool. I really, really wanted to do it. It had amazing original music that was being written. It was really cool. I'm hoping it makes a comeback, but if not, I am absolutely in the market to do a horror musical, and you'll be the first to hear about it if
Oh,
I get to do it. Yeah.
that'd be great because I love them. I mean, I watch Anna and the
Yeah.
Apocalypse, and
Yes.
was it Stage Fright? I believe it was called. It was one
Yes.
of them
Yes.
as well.
That's so
So
good.
I'm not quite.
It's coming back right now. There's like a trend a little bit for it,
Yeah,
so I'm hopeful that we'll get to make it still.
yeah. My good friend Dawn. We got tickets, and we've got to see Evil Dead the musical live, and that was
Cool. Yeah, I have friends who were in Vegas, right? I have
yeah.
friends who worked on that.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
hoping they were gonna make a like a
Mhm.
redo of it, like bring it back because I was
Sure.
absolutely gonna hop it on there, but unfortunately they stopped doing that one too.
Oh,
Yeah,
but
which is a shame.
yeah, actually, the local theater in Madison, Wisconsin did it. They did their own
Yeah,
version of it, but we
so
brought our
cool.
we I still got the poncho and I've got the little foam chainsaw from it and that, you know. But that's what I love about the horror genre. You could do so many things like
You
a
can do anything.
musical.
There's no
No.
restriction. That's why the genre is so great because anything goes. Like
Mhm.
there's no and every other genre you have to play by certain rules, but there are no rules in horror. You can do anything.
Yeah,
And that makes for some mischief.
that makes for some mischief, especially like in Frost. We'll
Right.
mention
Just
again.
like
See,
in
in
Frost.
case Cleopatra's watching, we're still talking
We're still,
Frost.
this is definitely all about Frost.
We're still
Okay.
all about Frost. But what I found interesting during the COVID lockdown and everything, and you as a producer and being involved in a lot of different things, including distribution,
Yeah.
I found it funny because I've been covering indie films for many years now. Uh, and it was great to see suddenly some big reviewers, some big YouTube reviewers, and that suddenly discover indie films because
Right?
everybody's
This
locked at home.
yeah. An indie film. What?
Did you kind of find that there was maybe a bit of a indie film re-interest into indie film?
Absolutely. You know, want to know why?
Hmm,
Because all the big productions had to halt. There was
right.
no content coming out, and everyone was sitting around like, what do we talk about? And the only things that were coming out, distributors suddenly gave opportunity to indie films they would not have given before because they needed to fill slots.
Hmm.
And reviewers and websites and things gave press because only people who were making content for real were people who knew how to make it within COVID
Right.
conditions and or who had made films just before it that didn't have a release because all the big studio films they're commissioned to have a release, you know what I mean? So I can't really say anything. This was absolutely commissioned and pre-sold, but
Well, yeah.
still usually that's rare.
Hmm.
Usually, usually it's just the big guys who get to do that. So they had no choice but to get out of the routine and dig around. And wouldn't you know, a lot of little indie gems and some really amazing talent that may not have gotten some coverage or even discovered got an opportunity to be seen. And it was, I know a lot of people had a hard time doing, but I actually, as horrible as it is, for a little bit of it, I was really okay
Hmm.
during the pandemic you know, because indie film was the forefront,
Right.
and bringing opportunities they would not have had normally. And of course, now once they got a routine, they could figure out a formula. The big guys came in and swooped everybody out as usual, right back where we were. But for a moment there, it was
Yeah.
great.
And
Yeah,
it still is though, because I think people stayed with it then because they dug deeper and they found, some people were more
I think
accessible
I
to,
think audiences sticked
Mhm.
with it,
Yeah.
honestly. I think audiences, were being spoon fed what you're supposed to, which is to make the big guys money, which is nothing wrong with that, by the way.
Right.
I hope to be one of those one day. But I think audiences, they discovered foreign films. They
Mhm.
suddenly realized here that they could read subtitles and have access to so much more shit. And it's not that hard. You can do it. And now it's
Mhm.
trending. You can do that. So there's a whole, I mean, Netflix isn't even like making or acquiring content anymore. They're just
No.
bringing everything in from their foreign departments and dumping it. And you know, an indie film too suddenly became almost mainstream, which is ironic, but it's trendy right now. So there is an audience that wasn't there before that I think did carry over from COVID. So again, we're hanging in there. We're getting smushed a little bit by the big guys who want a piece of that, of course, but we're hanging, which is, you know, I'm optimistic for what
Sure.
this next chapter is going to be as far as, you know, exposure for indie films, especially as everything moves more and more digital too.
Right. Frost is coming out October 11th. As you
Yes.
showed, the vinyl, the soundtrack's being released, the Blu-ray. I got the DVD. I don't have the Blu-ray, but the Blu-ray's being released with the soundtrack CD. Now, where can they follow your stuff to keep up with what Devanny is doing? The enormous amount of projects you've got going on. Where can they go to
Yes.
follow?
I'm very active on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at Devanny Pinn, DEVANNYPINN. Jump at me. I love to talk film, love to talk horror. So if you're into any of the above, please message me. If you see the movie and love it, let me know. If you saw the movie and hate it, and you hate me and you hate everything about it, then tell me too. I'm gonna quote you. Love it.
As what was it? Walter Matthew once said in Ed Wood, it's like, Eddie, this is Hollywood. There's no such thing as bad press.
That's right. That's right. And honestly, like again, I won't be if this is a very, very unique film, not for everybody, definitely,
Right.
you know, trigger warnings and everything. So if you're offended, I want to hear it. And two, I'm not going to be offended. I have a ton of movies in every subgenre. So if you don't care for this one, you will care for the next one, hopefully, which, by the way, is a World War II epic, completely different film called Battle for Saipan that comes out in November. And I also have a creature feature following that called The Flood, alligator movie. So I've got something for everybody, and I would love to meet you and talk to you. But I hope that you will give Flood a chance, or excuse me, Frost a chance. Wrong movie this morning. Flood too. Flood's gonna be fun.
We'll fix it in post. It's okay. I'll fix it in post.
Frost a chance on October 11th.
Yes.
And thank you so much for having me on.
You bet. Take care. Say hi to Brandon, and hopefully we can get a chance to talk again sometime.
I would love that. I hope that we'll talk to you for the next one for sure.
Fantastic.
Thanks so much.